The moment I stepped into the grand hall, the air was thick with laughter and the clinking of glasses. But beneath the glittering chandeliers, I felt the familiar chill of disdain. My brother's wedding was a celebration, yet to me, it felt like walking into a world where my victories were invisible. As I made my way through the crowd, I couldn't help but reflect on what had led me here. Just last week, I had achieved something monumental, securing a $30 million contract for Nexus Technologies. It was a feat that should have filled my family with pride, but instead, it seemed to vanish into the background noise of their indifference. "Congratulations on your success," someone said as they passed by, almost as an afterthought. The words barely registered amidst the ongoing chatter about my brother's achievements. His new wife, his career moves. Everything about him was celebrated with fervor. I plastered on a smile, though inside my thoughts ran rampant. Why is it still so hard for them to see me? To respect what I've accomplished? Inwardly, my resolve hardened. I remembered the late nights and sacrifices that came with closing that deal. Efforts that were mine alone, no one else's. Yet here I was again, in the shadow of familial favoritism. Looking around at faces animated with joy and ignorance alike, I realized that seeking validation from those who refused to give it was futile. A new determination seeded itself within me. Why chase approval from those who would never offer it when I could write my own story? With each toast raised around me for another person's life choices, my mind whispered a promise. I'd make sure they remembered Vanessa Powell, not just as their daughter or sister, but as someone unstoppable on her own path. This wasn't just my brother's wedding. It was a turning point. Growing up, all I ever wanted was to make my family proud. But it seemed that no matter how hard I tried, my achievements were shrouded in invisibility. Looking back, there was a pivotal moment when everything changed, when the cheers and applause that once felt within reach disappeared into an echoing chasm. I remember it clearly. My brother's triumphant win at his school basketball championship. The gymnasium was packed with excited fans. Their claps and whistles mingled with the squeak of sneakers on varnished wood. My brother's name thrummed through the air like a celebratory anthem. "Go, Alex!" they cheered, their voices drowning out anything else. I stood there in the bleachers, a forced smile plastered on my face as I clutched my latest report card in my hand. An evidence of months spent buried in textbooks, cradling late-night notes and dreams. A week before, I had been awarded top honors in an academic competition. A feat met with polite nods and murmured, "Good jobs," from my parents. It was treated as just another day. But here, in this sea of energy and excitement for Alex's victory, the disparity became painfully clear. Why does his score matter more than mine? The question weighed heavily on my heart as we drove home that night. Silence filled the car like an unwelcome guest. And maybe it wasn't just about sports or academics. It was about being seen. Yet, there was a flicker of realization creeping in beneath that pain. This wasn't about changing who I am, but recognizing what truly matters to me. My worth isn't measured by others' recognition. As the echoes of cheers faded into memory, they became the fuel for something new, something resilient. In the quiet hum of pre-dawn, when the world is still wrapped in the soft blanket of night, I find myself at my desk, a lone light flickering defiantly against the encroaching darkness. Every morning starts this way now. Early unseen hours where dreams are knitted with determination. You see, I've risked everything for this company. My company. My pursuit of something greater than just survival. From the outside, it might seem like insanity, living so modestly, scraping by on what most would consider the bare minimum. But to me, it's a calculated gamble, one I knew I'd have to take without the cushion of family support beneath me. My parents never understood why I traded a stable job and predictable paycheck for uncertainty and sleepless nights. "Why gamble your future away?" they asked, their voices echoing concerns that seemed as vast as the chasm between us. But every time doubt whispered its seductive song into my ear, I reminded myself, this is not just for money or success. It's about proving to myself that I'm capable of building something meaningful out of nothing but sheer willpower and relentless effort. So many times I sat alone in my cramped apartment, wondering if they were right, wondering if maybe I was destined to fail like they predicted. Yet quitting was never an option. With each sacrifice, missed gatherings, untouched savings, came a steely resolve that hardened my spirit and sharpened my focus. This journey isn't just about creating a business. It's about becoming someone who can stand tall on her own terms. And though fear often shadows ambition's path, I've learned that courage isn't the absence of fear, but rather facing it head on. And so, as another day dawns and I'm met again with quiet solitude before the world awakens, I'm reminded, this is not just my struggle, it's my choice, and that's powerful. The ink had barely dried on the $30 million contract with Bradford Enterprises, and yet my heart was still racing. As I sat in the quietude of the conference room, a cascade of emotions washed over me. This moment felt like triumph and vindication rolled into one. A personal victory that reverberated far beyond the sterile walls surrounding me. For so long, I'd been overshadowed by my family's legacy. A towering monolith that seemed to cast its judgment over all my endeavors. Growing up, it was as if every achievement of mine was attributed not to my own hard work or insights, but to the name I bore. "Of course she closed that deal," they'd murmured dismissively. "She's got her family's backing." How many times had their casual disregard gnawed at my confidence, slowly corroding my sense of self-worth? But now, here I was. A contract worth $30 million signed solely on my merit. It wasn't just paper. It was proof. Proof that I was more than just a surname. More than whispered criticisms behind closed doors. I remembered the first meeting with Bradford Enterprises. Walking into that imposing boardroom with a confidence that belied the knot of anxiety in my stomach. "You're here because we believe in your vision," Mr. Bradford had said, his voice steady and sincere. It was like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters. This deal wasn't about family connections. It was validation of my capabilities. A testament to what I could achieve when unburdened by expectations and doubts, not of my making. As I gathered my papers and prepared to leave, I felt an unfamiliar lightness in my step, as if shedding an invisible weight I'd carried for too long. The path ahead glimmered with possibilities not defined by others, but shaped by me alone. Each step forward was a declaration. I am Nexus, not merely born of a lineage, but forged by my own ambition. The moment I walked into that engagement party, my heart felt lighter than it had in years. Love had a way of doing that, washing over you like a warm wave, promising serenity and a future filled with possibility. Vanessa was my beacon in all of this, a brilliant light, guiding me through the murkiness of past mistakes and regrets. As friends and family buzzed around us, offering congratulations and well wishes, I couldn't shake this niggling sense of unease. It was as if an unseen shadow lurked just beyond my vision, waiting to pounce. Still, I chose to ignore it. Ignorance is bliss, until it isn't. Richard! Scott's voice cut through the chatter. He sauntered towards me with that easy confidence that once made us inseparable friends. Looking good, man. You ready for this? I smiled tightly, nodding. More than ready, I replied, hoping my voice carried more conviction than I felt. Then came the moment that shattered everything I thought I knew. Vanessa introduced Scott to her relatives as her brother. My mind reeled as reality crashed down on me with bruising force. How could I have missed the signs? How could Scott have hidden something so monumental from me? Inside my head, a chaotic storm brewed. Why didn't he tell me? Was this some sort of test or betrayal? Each question stabbed at my heart with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Vanessa is your sister? My voice barely rose above a whisper, but the crack in it echoed loudly between us. Scott's eyes flickered with something unreadable before settling onto mine, guilt, or perhaps regret. I couldn't tell. And just like that, the room felt colder, hostile even. A place where love was overshadowed by secrets and unfinished business. Every laugh around me rang hollow now, as realization settled. My best friend had kept something crucial from me. But why? With each passing second, questions loomed larger than the celebration itself. Questions that demanded answers. The day had finally arrived. The one I had imagined so many times in my dreams. My sister's wedding, a celebration of love, unity, and family. I stood there, draped in a dress that matched the color of early spring flowers, desperately hoping this event would be more than just a gathering, that it might finally be my moment of recognition. As the guests started to arrive, I felt a fluttering in my chest, a mix of anxiety and hope. Today, perhaps they would see me not just as Vanessa, the quieter sister who was always overshadowed by her siblings' brilliance, but as someone worthy of acknowledgement. I glanced at my reflection in a nearby mirror, deep brown eyes filled with anticipation peering back at me. Would today change everything? After all the years spent in the background, always playing second fiddle to my sister's accomplishments and charm. Vanessa, can you help with the flower arrangements? My mother's voice broke through my thoughts. Her tone was casual, yet it carried an unspoken expectation that I would step up without question. It had always been like this. Supporting roles were practically embedded into my DNA. Still, I held on to hope like a lifeline, imagining that after the vows were exchanged and the first dance concluded under shimmering lights, someone might say those words I longed to hear. Vanessa, you've done so much. With each passing hour, laughter and clinking glasses filled the hall. My sister glowed with happiness, her smile lighting up every corner she touched. For a brief moment, jealousy twisted inside me but was quickly replaced by resolve. Maybe today wasn't about instant recognition. Perhaps it was about planting seeds for future respect, showing through action that I deserved to be seen and heard. I took a deep breath and returned to my duties with renewed purpose. The journey wasn't over. It had merely begun. I could feel my heart pounding as we approached the estate, each beat echoing the mix of excitement and dread that churned in my stomach. The grandeur of it all was overwhelming. Towering gates opened to a sweeping driveway lined with sculpted hedges, leading up to a mansion that seemed to belong in a different world. I glanced over at Marcus, his expression a mixture of pride and apprehension, his eyes fixed straight ahead. As we stepped out of the car, I couldn't help but marvel at the scene unfolding before us. Guests dressed in their finest milled about, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air. It was like stepping into a fairy tale, one where I wasn't sure if I was invited. "It's beautiful," I whispered to Marcus, hoping he couldn't hear the tremor in my voice. "Yeah," he replied, his voice steadier than mine. "It really is." But underneath his calm facade, I sensed an undercurrent of tension. This was more than just a wedding, this was a performance. Walking hand in hand towards the grand entrance, I felt like an outsider looking in. The opulence screamed wealth and power, everything Marcus's family epitomized but had never fully accepted me into. Each step closer felt heavier, with unspoken judgments awaiting inside. "Vanessa," Marcus said suddenly, pulling me from my thoughts. He stopped and faced me, sincerity softening his features. "We belong here." His words were both a promise and a plea for us both to believe it. But deep down, doubt gnawed at me. Was there room for us in this gilded cage? With one last look at him, and taking a deep breath to steady myself, we walked forward together into whatever awaited us beyond those doors. Recognition can be a double-edged sword, and I felt its sharp edge press against my skin the moment Richard began his speech. He stood before the room, his voice as smooth as polished silk, extolling the virtues of the software that had become my pride and my passion. A swell of pride rose in me as he detailed its innovations, my heart thumping a rhythm only I could hear. This was it, a moment where all those sleepless nights and endless lines of code were finally being acknowledged. "Vanessa has truly outdone herself," Richard announced, sending ripples of applause through the crowd. My eyes glimmered with gratitude as I met his gaze from across the room. For a brief, shining second, I let myself bask in the warmth of deserved recognition. But then, like a shadow creeping over sunlight, my father's voice pierced the celebratory air. "Well, Scott was instrumental in this project as well," he interjected smoothly, steering the spotlight away from me and onto Scott, who had done little more than hand me coffee on late nights. My smile faltered as his words sank into my chest like stones. I searched for an explanation in his eyes. Why couldn't he simply let me have this moment? But instead of understanding or support, all I found was an unwavering determination to shift credit away from me. The familiar sting of betrayal settled in, a sensation all too common in our family dynamics. In that instant, I realized something important. Standing idle would only allow others to rewrite my narrative. A wave of determination rushed through me. I would not let this injustice stand without challenge. "Actually," I interjected softly, yet firmly enough to reclaim attention. "It was a team effort, but I'm proud to say that this software is largely my creation." The room hushed momentarily, eyes swiveling back to me with renewed focus. This was no longer just about software. It was about reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Have you ever felt the sting of a smile that hides a knife? That was exactly how I felt during our latest family gathering. Tiffany, my supposed best friend and cousin, had this way of disguising her jabs as jokes, weaving her words into a web designed to catch me off guard. The moment she saw me, her eyes flicked over my dress with a glint that promised venom. "Oh, Vanessa," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness. "I love how you always go for such bold choices." Her smile stretched wide as if she hadn't just delivered a blow wrapped in silk. My heart twisted in its cage because the dress was new, chosen with care, hoping to bring a splash of confidence to an otherwise daunting evening. For a second I faltered, questioning myself under the glare of her seemingly innocent remark. Was it too bold? Did I really look out of place? But then I reminded myself who Tiffany really is. A master at making me doubt my worth while she basked in the spotlight of our family's admiration. Taking a deep breath to steady the tremor in my voice, I replied, "Thank you, Tiffany. I'm glad you noticed." I hoped my tone carried strength instead of the hurt bubbling beneath my skin. A shift in the room's atmosphere hinted at another subtle game, seating arrangements. As we moved toward dinner, I couldn't help but glimpse at the table setting that promised more than just awkward small talk. It foreshadowed alliances and invisible battle lines drawn long before tonight. As I watched Tiffany glide effortlessly into her seat, surrounded by allies both real and imagined, a spark flickered within me. A realization that this was not just about surviving another evening, but reshaping it all together. In that moment, with my heart firming its resolve for what lay ahead, I knew tonight was not simply about enduring sly remarks. It was about reclaiming my narrative. Sitting at the kitchen table, I felt as if the weight of the world had settled onto my shoulders. The soft hum of the refrigerator was my only company, a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. Moments earlier, I had been on top of everything, or so I thought. As the lead in organizing this event, every detail mattered. I'd poured my heart and soul into making sure it was perfect. But now, the sheen of excitement was dimmed by a cold, creeping doubt. Across from me sat the catering manager, his eyes darting around nervously as he explained, "It was just an oversight." His words echoed in my mind, hollow and unconvincing. My grip tightened around the edge of the table. An oversight? How could it be? In those words lay a chasm of disappointment and disbelief. A mental checklist began ticking through my head. Menus cross-checked multiple times, guest preferences noted with precision, all meticulously curated by me. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself amidst the turmoil. An oversight, I repeated slowly, each syllable heavy with incredulity. He nodded quickly, too quickly. "Yes, we understand how important this is to you," he continued lightly, as if that would appease me. But understanding wasn't enough. It never seemed to be enough when others' carelessness dismantled what I had worked tirelessly to build. Each minute detail lost in translation felt personal, like a betrayal wrapped in polite excuses. "I need more than just words," I whispered softly but firmly, finding my voice amidst the chaos inside. This was not something I would let slide easily. Not anymore. His face faltered ever so slightly under my steady gaze. The power shift was subtle, yet profound. Here in this quiet room, determination bloomed anew within me. As his weak assurances faded into silence, I knew this wasn't over. It was merely the beginning. You know that feeling when the world suddenly shifts beneath your feet, and nothing seems steady anymore? That's exactly what happened to me when Tiffany uttered those fateful words. "Scott approved the seating," she said casually, as if she hadn't just shattered my trust like fragile glass. In that moment, I could feel my heart sinking, a cold realization washing over me. Scott, my Scott, had always been the one person I believed in without question. We were supposed to be a team, partners navigating the often treacherous waters of family dynamics together. Yet here I was, standing frozen, blindsided by his silent betrayal. He did, I managed to choke out, struggling to keep my voice steady. But inside, a storm was raging, emotions clashing and surging within me like an untamed sea. Tiffany nodded with an air of nonchalance that only fueled my disbelief. How could he make such a decision without even discussing it with me? Weren't we supposed to have each other's backs? My mind flashed back to all those late-night conversations where we'd promised transparency and honesty. Had those moments been mere illusions? My stomach churned at the thought. I felt the need to confront him boiling up from within me, demanding justice for the hurt simmering beneath my calm exterior. Yet somewhere deep inside, doubt whispered insidiously, "What else hasn't he told me?" As anger mingled with sorrow, I knew that this wasn't just about seating arrangements anymore. It was about trust, or rather its sudden absence. In silence, I turned away from Tiffany's probing gaze, resolving then and there to find out why Scott had made this choice without me. As I took a deep breath, determination replaced despair. It was time for answers. And so began the unraveling of our carefully woven relationship fabric. But first, I needed to face him. Amidst the chaos of my own thoughts, a single truth pierces through the fog like a beacon. I've been living in a shadow that isn't mine. I sit alone in the dimly lit room, the air thick with the remnants of yesterday's arguments and unspoken words. Each breath feels heavy, like it carries the weight of all those times I let myself be silenced or made small. I gaze out the window, watching as the world moves on without me, the trees swaying gently under a sky full of possibilities. It's painfully clear now. I deserve better than this life I've been leading. I deserve to be seen, heard, cherished. Yet here I've been, settling for scraps when I should have demanded more. The realization is at once liberating and terrifying. How did it take me so long to recognize this? Was it fear? The comfort of familiarity? Or perhaps those fleeting moments when things were good enough to ignore the bad? Internal voices swirl around me, doubts, whispering insidiously. Are you sure you're not overreacting? Maybe you're expecting too much. But no, this time is different. This time their whispers are drowned out by a stronger voice inside me, a voice that aches for freedom and authenticity. I stand up slowly, feeling every inch of my body brimming with newfound resolve. It's as if I've shed an old skin, and underneath there's this person who had been waiting for her chance to live fully. The decision to act isn't just an impulse, it's a promise to myself. My heart pounds with both fear and exhilaration as I think about what comes next. The conversations I must have, boundaries I need to set, even people I may have to leave behind. But then again, isn't that what growth is about? To step into the unknown with nothing but hope as your guide. And so I decide, it's time to reclaim my life. This journey won't be easy, but sometimes doing what's right feels anything but comfortable. The moment Marcus looked into my eyes, I felt a warmth spreading through me, melting the icy grip of doubt and fear that had held me captive for far too long. His gaze was steady, a beacon of unwavering support in the storm of turmoil raging inside me. "Vanessa," he said softly but firmly, "you know what you need to do. You're stronger than this." His words were simple, yet powerful, each one like a lifeline pulling me closer to shore. In that instant, the fog began to lift. I felt something shift deep within, a small but significant piece of myself falling back into place. For too long, I'd let others dictate my worth, allowing their voices to drown out my own. But here was Marcus, patiently reminding me of who I truly was beneath the layers of anxiety and uncertainty. It was as though he'd reached into my soul and reignited the confidence that had been lying dormant. "You're right," I breathed out slowly, the realization settling over me like dawn, breaking after a long night. I could almost see it. The versions of myself I'd almost lost in pursuit of someone else's approval. With newfound determination coursing through me, I picked up my phone and dialed the number that had seemed so daunting just moments before. Each ring felt like an eternity, but with each one, my resolve only hardened. When the call connected, my voice was steady and clear, a reflection of the strength Marcus had helped me uncover. "I'd like to cancel the contract," I stated firmly. No longer a question but a declaration. As I ended the call, a wave of relief washed over me, erasing traces of past hesitations. A smile tugged at my lips. And this time it wasn't forced. It was genuine. Marcus stepped closer, his presence reassuringly solid beside me. "Proud of you," he whispered. And in this moment, I was proud too. There's a certain heaviness in my steps as I approach the reception area, each footfall echoing with the quiet roar of a brewing storm. I can feel the intensity of what's about to unfold, simmering beneath my skin like a barely contained volcano. The air is thick with anticipation as I push through the doors, my heart pounding louder than it ever has before. I enter, scanning the room that seems deceptively calm, almost mocking me with its serene disposition. There they are, my family, sitting together in an illusion of unity. To an outsider, they'd seem caring and supportive. But to me, they're a web of lies spun too tight around my life. My voice quivers slightly as I break the silence. "We need to talk." The words hang in the air, like a pronouncement of war. Their eyes meet mine with a mixture of surprise and veiled annoyance. It's clear they didn't expect this confrontation. Certainly not here. Not now. "Vanessa," my mother starts, her tone laced with feigned concern. "What's this about? Can't it wait?" I inhale deeply, steadying my resolve against their dismissive gazes. I've been silenced for far too long by their manipulations and excuses. "No," I reply firmly. "It can't wait anymore." In that moment, clarity washes over me like a floodlight cutting through darkness. Years of biting my tongue and swallowing pain have led to this pivotal point. My mind races back to all those instances when I was made to feel small and insignificant. And then it hits me. The realization that reclaiming power isn't just about speaking up. It's about refusing to be overshadowed by those who claim to love you, but only aim to control you. Their faces begin to blur into one collective portrait of disbelief as I make known every unspoken truth. And there it is, a crack in their perfect facade, a sign that perhaps, just perhaps, I've finally made them listen. In the thick of whispered deceit and unsettling smiles, I found myself standing at the head table, my heart pounding louder than the conversations around me. The moment had arrived. The time to confront Richard, Scott, and Tiffany. As I approached them, a hush fell over the room, as if everyone sensed that something monumental was about to occur. "Vanessa!" Richard's voice cut through my thoughts, a facade of surprise painting his face. But beneath it lay traces of guilt he could not completely hide. His eyes darted nervously while he tried to maintain composure. "Is everything all right?" The question hung in the air like an unwelcome intruder. My mind flickered back to every betrayal, every lie disguised as truth. My hands trembled slightly as I clenched them into fists to steady my resolve. "No," I replied, my voice betraying none of the turmoil within. "Everything is far from all right." I could see Tiffany exchanging looks with Scott. A silent communication that only those steeped in treachery could understand. My gaze locked onto each of them in turn. Their facade of innocence started to crumble under scrutiny. "I know about everything," I declared with a steadiness that surprised even me. "The lies, the scheming, all of it." A ripple of shock passed through the crowd like a wave crashing against stubborn rocks. For a moment, silence reigned supreme, their masks slipping ever so slightly. Scott opened his mouth, perhaps to deny or defend. But there was nothing left for him to say that wouldn't be swallowed by the truth I'd laid bare. In that instant, power shifted unmistakably in my favor. It was no longer just about uncovering betrayal. It was about reclaiming my dignity, here and now. The confrontation wasn't just a declaration, it was a promise of change. And though fear gnawed at the edges of my courage, I felt stronger than ever before, ready for what came next. The room buzzed with the kind of tension that sends a chill up your spine. The type that grips your heart and squeezes until breathing becomes an afterthought. I stood there, surrounded by whispers and eyes filled with anticipation, feeling the weight of my decision in every breath I took. This was it. The moment I had been building up to in my mind for weeks, perhaps years. As I reached for my phone, my fingers trembled slightly, but not from fear. From a newfound sense of determination coursing through me like wildfire. After everything I'd endured, the betrayal, the lies, the manipulation, I knew this action would be more than just business. It was personal. A voice inside me whispered, "You owe this to yourself." Another voice hesitated, reminding me of what was at stake. $30 million and all the influence that came with it. But then I remembered how those same people had undermined me at every turn, eroding my trust inch by inch until I barely recognized myself. I dialed the number, each ring echoing louder than the last as it connected to my team on speakerphone. Their greetings were brisk and professional, masking the uncertainty that hung between us like a thick fog. "I'm cancelling the contract," I announced clearly, each word slicing through the air with unwavering resolve. Silence answered me, a silence so profound it seemed to pause time itself. Finally, someone on the line stammered in disbelief, "Are you sure?" And for once, without hesitation or doubt clouding my judgment, I replied firmly, "Yes." This was about reclaiming control, not just over my career, but over my life. As I hung up and faced those around me whose expressions ranged from shock to admiration, an unexpected calm washed over me. For too long, I'd let others dictate how things should be. It was time they saw who truly held the reins now, and that person was me. In the shadow of betrayal, a single spark of hope can ignite the fiercest fire. It was one of those days when the air felt thick with the weight of unfulfilled promises and silent grievances. Yet, amidst this oppressive fog, came an unexpected glimmer. A lifeline extended from the most surprising source. I stood in my office, my sanctuary and prison, flipping through reports half-heartedly. Each page seemed to whisper echoes of my past failures and heartbreaks. My thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock at the door. "Vanessa," came a voice I barely recognized, but would come to cherish. They introduced themselves one after another. A group of businessmen whose faces were unfamiliar, yet sincere in their gaze. They spoke quickly and earnestly, their words tumbling over each other like eager children trying to be first in line. "We've heard about your work," one said, his eyes alight with genuine admiration. Your vision aligns perfectly with what we're looking for. My heart skipped a beat. Was this real? Could it be that someone still saw value in me, in what I've built? I listened as they laid out their proposal, each word weaving a tapestry of opportunity that seemed almost too bright to grasp. As they spoke, I felt something warm unfurl within me, something forgotten, but not completely lost. Hope. It stirred beneath layers of doubt and fear, rising steadily until it dared to touch the surface. Why me? I dared to ask, my voice betraying both skepticism and longing. Their answer was simple yet profound. Because we believe in your potential more than you currently do. These words reached deep into the cavern where I'd stored my doubts, illuminating dark corners with possibilities. And there it was, a moment where tides began to turn, the shifting sands under my feet firming up into solid ground. This was more than just business. It was a promise that maybe, just maybe, redemption lay within reach. Not only professionally, but personally too. I nodded slowly, meeting their eager eyes with newfound resolve. Let's do this, I replied softly but firmly, marking the beginning of something new and unstoppable. The air felt unusually heavy as I stepped outside. My heart braced for the impending storm. There he was, my father, a towering figure of authority and disapproval, standing like a sentinel against the backdrop of our modest home. His eyes bore into me with an intensity that could only mean one thing: confrontation. What were you thinking? He barked, his voice sharp enough to cut through the crisp evening air. It wasn't just anger in his tone. There was disappointment, a silence that shouted louder than words ever could. I took a deep breath, willing myself to remain composed. Every instinct screamed at me to retreat, but I stood my ground. I was thinking about what's right for me, I replied, the conviction in my voice surprising even myself. He shook his head, disbelief etched into every line on his weathered face. You've always been so stubborn, he muttered, more to himself than to me. His frustration was palpable, a wave crashing relentlessly against the rocky shore of my resolve. In that moment of tension and doubt, I realized something profound. This wasn't just about defying him. This was about finally allowing myself to be heard in a world where I'd often been silenced. This is my life, I continued, forcing my voice to steady despite the quiver that threatened to betray me. I have to make choices that align with who I am, not who you want me to be. As the words left my lips, they hung in the air like a lifeline thrown into turbulent seas. For a flicker of an instant, uncertainty crossed his features, a chink in the armor he'd worn for years. I held on to that brief moment as hope kindled within me. This confrontation was not just with him, but with every shadow of doubt I'd carried inside. A battle between past expectations and newfound courage. A battle I was determined not to lose. Have you ever looked into the eyes of those who should have loved you equally, only to find cold indifference where warmth should have been? I found myself standing in my parents' living room, a place that once felt like home, but now echoed with memories of isolation. It was time to face the truth I'd buried under years of silent pain. Mom, Dad, I started, my voice quivering yet determined. I need to talk to you about something that's haunted me for too long. Silence blanketed the room, heavier than any words could be. There they sat, oblivious, or maybe just unwilling to acknowledge the elephant between us. Favoritism. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every moment I'd been sidelined. Why was it always John who got the praise? Why did his achievements shine so brightly in your eyes while mine were dismissed as nothing more than flickers in the shadows? My heart pounded in my chest as I finally released years of pent-up hurt and resentment. Their faces remained unreadable, but inside me, a storm raged. Had they ever noticed how their words cut like knives? How every dismissive shrug seemed to affirm my fears that perhaps I wasn't enough? "We never meant to make you feel that way," my mother said softly, her voice trembling slightly. But it was too late for soft reassurances. What I needed was acknowledgement of the wound. In that moment of confrontation, something shifted inside me. A newfound strength surged forth as I realized this wasn't just about seeking apologies. It was about reclaiming my worth. "I just want you to see me," I declared with a steadiness that surprised even me. The room fell silent again as my words lingered in the air between us. And though their response remained uncertain, a sense of liberation washed over me. A small but significant victory on this path toward healing. The air between us felt like it was crackling with electricity, the kind that warns of an impending storm. Scott's eyes bore into me, filled with an urgency that was almost feral. "You need to fix this," he demanded, his voice a mixture of desperation and anger. In that moment, I felt my heart beat faster, as if trying to escape the confines of my chest. The weight of his words pressed down on me, but I refused to let them crush me. What did he expect me to do? Roll over and cater to his whims again? This time, something deep within stirred. A quiet resolve that I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. "No," I said firmly, almost surprising myself with the strength in my voice. It echoed through the room like a defiant anthem, shaking loose the chains of compliance I'd worn for so long. Scott's face twisted with disbelief and frustration. "You can't just say no," he retorted, as though I had broken some unspoken rule. But in truth, it was he who had shattered our trust long ago. He stood there, expecting me to submit as I always had. But the person he expected was no longer standing here. She had slipped away under the weight of too many betrayals and broken promises. I glanced at him and saw not a partner, but someone who had taken up residence in my life like an unwelcome guest. In refusing his demand, I was setting boundaries, not just for him, but for myself, reclaiming pieces of me that had been lost along the way. His silence stretched out awkwardly between us, a tangible testament to my newfound strength. And while I knew this wasn't the end of our confrontation, it was a beginning for me. With this simple act of refusal, I created space for healing and self-respect. Not just a pause in our endless battles, but perhaps the first step toward reclaiming my own narrative. There was a heaviness in the air as Richard approached me, his expression unreadable yet intense. "Vanessa," he said, his voice laced with a hint of desperation. "Can we talk privately for a moment?" My heart pounded in my chest, echoing the tension that filled the space between us. I knew what this was about. I could see it in the way he avoided my eyes, the slight tremor in his hands. I nodded reluctantly, leading him away from prying ears and curious eyes. A part of me was bracing for impact, while another part dared to hope. Hope that maybe this time he would understand. As soon as we were alone, Richard wasted no time. "Vanessa," he began carefully, "I know things got out of hand before, but I think it's time we reconsider our deal." His words hung in the air like a fragile glass ornament ready to shatter. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every past hurt and betrayal press against my chest. Memories of broken promises and manipulations flashed through my mind like ghosts haunting an old house. Richard, I started slowly, ensuring each word carried the gravity of my resolve. I'm not reinstating the deal. It's just not possible anymore. He opened his mouth to protest, frustration etching lines across his forehead. But I raised my hand slightly, not to silence him with force, but with a quiet finality that spoke volumes more than any argument could. You have to understand, I continued softly yet firmly. It's taken everything in me to reach this point. This isn't about holding grudges or seeking revenge. It's about finally valuing myself enough to walk away from what doesn't serve me. It felt freeing and terrifying all at once. A leap off the edge into self-preservation. His face fell, but I knew then that this was the beginning of reclaiming my narrative, the first step toward healing whatever was left of my fractured heart. There I was, gripping the steering wheel as if it were the lifeline to my new reality. The road stretched out before me, a silver ribbon promising escape, and with each mile that slipped beneath the tires, I felt chains breaking away. For too long, I had been ensnared in a web of deceit and manipulation. But now I was free. I glanced in the rearview mirror, watching the scenery of my past dissolve into fragments. Gone were the shadows of doubt cast by those who claimed to love me, yet bound me in their silent judgments and whispered betrayals. A deep breath filled my lungs, a symbolic gulp of the fresh start I so desperately craved. This is it, I whispered to myself, needing to hear my own voice over the hum of the engine. You're finally doing it. But even as liberation unfurled within me, like a sail catching a welcome breeze, fear lingered in the corners of my mind. What if they were right? What if stepping away meant stepping into nothingness? Yet just as swiftly, another thought echoed louder, stronger. What if this is everything you've needed? My heart quickened at the realization that this road was more than just asphalt and lines. It was possibility. It was hope. The sun began to dip low on the horizon, casting a warm glow across the dashboard. It illuminated all those hidden parts I'd kept locked away, for fear of rejection or failure. In that light, I saw not only what had been, but what could be. With every passing moment, the weight lifted further from my shoulders, replaced by a growing sense of empowerment. Liberation wasn't just an idea anymore. It was tangible and real. Something no one could take from me. As I drove into this new chapter of my life, a single tear slipped down my cheek. Not one born from sadness, but from sheer relief. And for once, I dared to smile. The moment I stepped back into my office, the weight of what had just transpired hung over me like a dense fog. My mind swirled with emotions, fear, anger, and a flickering hope that perhaps, somehow, things would get better. But in that moment, the uncertainty was suffocating. Just as I was trying to gather myself, Gregory walked in. Gregory had always been a steady presence at the company, someone whose judgment I respected. Yet I couldn't shake the trepidation that tightened my chest as I prepared to tell him everything. Would he understand? Or would he side with those who had undermined me? With a deep breath, I decided it was time to lay it all out, every betrayal, every whispered lie that had threatened to dismantle everything I'd worked for. Gregory, I began, my voice barely concealing the tremor beneath it. There's something you need to know about what's been happening here. As I spoke, my words poured out like an untamed river. revealing the depth of deceit and manipulation I'd uncovered. He listened intently, his expression unreadable at first, but his eyes, those steady eyes, never wavered from mine. When I finally finished, there was a pause, a heartbeat of silence where time seemed to freeze. Then Gregory nodded slowly, his gaze softening with understanding and resolve. "I support your decision," he said firmly. Those words wrapped around me like a lifeline thrown into stormy seas. His solidarity felt like an anchor in this chaotic storm. It transformed my lingering doubt into something solid and unyielding, a spark of resilience ready to ignite into action. With Gregory by my side, I felt a resurgence of strength welling up within me. It became clear that this battle was far from over. Together we would stand firm against those who sought to strip away what we had built. And for the first time in weeks, I allowed myself the luxury of hope, the quiet belief that justice might finally begin its slow march towards redemption. When I stood my ground, I never expected it to resonate beyond the confines of our small town. But sometimes, standing up for what you believe in echoes further than you could ever imagine. This was one of those times. I remember the day it all changed. It was a typical morning, coffee brewing, the sun barely peeking through the blinds, as I prepared myself for another round of battles at work. That's when the emails began to flood in. At first, I thought it was just spam, until I noticed the subject lines. Inspiring, thank you for your integrity, and looking to connect. Each message seemed to pulse with a new kind of energy, an interest that felt almost foreign compared to the dismissals I'd grown accustomed to. "Vanessa," they began, each one echoing a sentiment that surprised me. "Your courage has not gone unnoticed." My heart swelled with a mix of disbelief and cautious hope as I continued reading their words of encouragement and, more intriguingly, proposals for collaboration. These were people who had heard about my stand against unethical practices at work, a stand that nearly cost me everything. And instead of turning away in fear or ridicule, they wanted to support me. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with notifications from potential clients eager to align with someone who valued principles over profit. It was overwhelming. This sudden shift from isolation to connection. Could it be real? Was my voice finally being heard? Sitting there in front of my computer screen, surrounded by possibility and validation, I felt a glimmer of something I hadn't dared feel in ages. Hope. Hope that maybe this fight wasn't just mine alone anymore. In that moment, I realized that taking a principled stand might have shaken things up more than anticipated. It had opened new doors entirely. And as these opportunities unfolded before me, like never-ending paths waiting to be explored, I knew one thing for certain. This was only the beginning. Standing there, with the weight of the world pressing down on my shoulders, I took a deep breath and tried to steady my racing heart. The room felt colder than usual, as if anticipating the chill of rejection that loomed on the horizon. This was my last chance, my final plea to salvage something from the ruins of this deal that once seemed like my saving grace. "Vanessa?" I started, trying to keep my voice from cracking under the strain of desperation. "I know things haven't gone as planned, but please reconsider. We've invested so much. There's still potential here." My words hung in the air, heavy with hope and fear. She looked at me with a gaze that was both piercing and detached, a look I'd come to dread. Vanessa had always been an enigma, her decisions unpredictable yet definitive. Her silence sliced through me like a blade. I fought to keep my composure, even as memories of all our struggles flashed behind my eyes. Every late night strategizing, every compromise and concession we made. It wasn't just business, it was personal. "Eleanor," she finally said, her tone calm but unyielding. "I'm sorry. It's over. I've already decided to walk away." With those words, it felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. My heart sank into an abyss of disappointment and sorrow. How could she be so resolute? There were moments when I thought we understood each other, shared a vision, a friendship even. As Vanessa turned to leave, a part of me wanted to scream, to plead once more for her understanding. Yet another part realized that perhaps this door needed to close for others to open. There I stood, alone, yet undeterred by rejection's sting. A daunting path lay ahead, but somewhere within me, determination flickered anew. The phone rang with an unexpected urgency, a sound I hadn't heard in years. My heart skipped a beat as I glanced at the caller ID, Aunt Diana. Her name flashed on the screen like a ghost from my past, one I'd worked so hard to forget. "Vanessa!" Her voice crackled through the line, infused with both warmth and uncertainty. "It's been too long." I stood there, rooted to my spot. Memories flooding back of family gatherings filled with tension and whispered judgments. Diana had always been something of an enigma to me. Distant, yet somehow ever-present, like a shadow lurking at the edge of every family event. "I know it's out of the blue," she continued after my brief silence, "but I've been thinking about you a lot lately." Her words carried weight, each one peeling back layers of familial history I thought I'd left behind. "Why now?" I wanted to ask, but didn't. Instead, I listened. There was a pause, a moment suspended in time where I could almost hear her considering her next words carefully. "I'm proud of you, Vanessa," she finally said. Proud? The word hung in the air between us, strange yet comforting. "Proud that you broke the pattern," she clarified, when I didn't respond quickly enough. This acknowledgement hit me harder than anticipated. For years, I had been suffocating under the weight of expectations set by generations before me. Expectations that dictated how we should live our lives, who we should be loyal to. But now, hearing my aunt acknowledge my struggles and strengths, an admission that none had dared speak aloud, felt like a vindication. In that moment, surrounded by old wounds still tender to the touch and new hopes just beginning to take root, I realized something monumental. Breaking free wasn't simply an act of rebellion, it was an act of survival. And as Aunt Diana's voice softened into silence over the phone, I knew this conversation marked not just an end, but a new beginning. I got a text from Scott, the kind that makes your heart stop for a moment, then sends it racing. "Can we meet?" "Just us," it read. Immediately, I was flooded with a mix of dread and anticipation. Scott, the person who once stood by me as my confidant, my supposed rock, had become the architect of my deepest pain. Why now? Why this sudden reach towards a reconciliation? As I sat there, phone in hand, memories bombarded me like waves crashing relentlessly against the shore. Our laughter-filled days, followed by those tense moments when I felt his presence grow cold and distant. It was as if a part of me knew this meeting wasn't just about reliving old times. It could very well be the start of something new or the final chapter. "What do you want from me now?" echoed in my thoughts as I got ready. My mind spiraled through scenarios. What would I say? How would he look at me? Those piercing eyes that once held promises now betrayed. Arriving at the quiet cafe we used to frequent, uncertainty gripped me tighter than any embrace ever could. There he was, seated at our usual corner table, looking both familiar and foreign all at once. As I walked towards him, each step felt heavy with unresolved emotions. "Hey," he stood up awkwardly. "Hi," I managed to reply, fighting back the swirl of emotions threatening to surface. Sitting across from him now, it felt surreal, like stepping into a time capsule, but knowing too well what lay outside its fragile confines. Scott cleared his throat, a telltale sign of nerves, and finally said, "I didn't know how else to begin, but I've been doing some thinking." His words hung between us like a fragile bridge over turbulent waters. A part of me wanted to rush across it while another hesitated at the edge. "I'm listening," I said softly, bracing myself for whatever direction this conversation might take. The air felt heavier than usual that day. Eleanor had called, her voice tinged with a sincerity I hadn't heard in years. "You should know, Bradford regrets losing Nexus," she said, pausing as if the words tasted foreign even to her. My grip tightened on the phone, a wave of mixed emotions crashing over me. Disbelief, anger, longing. Could it be true? My mind raced back to countless nights filled with silent tears and unanswered questions about how everything fell apart between us. There was a time when Bradford's ambition seemed limitless, when every plan, every dream centered around our shared vision for Nexus. But somewhere along the way, his ambition mutated into something darker, suffocating all that we had built together. I often wondered if he ever looked back, or if the loss gnawed at him as it did at me. Eleanor's call echoed in my mind long after we hung up. "He wants to apologize," she'd added just before disconnecting. But what did an apology mean now? Would it heal the scars left by betrayal? Or was it merely a balm for his guilt-ridden conscience? I paced my living room, each step a battle between skepticism and hope. My heart yearned for closure, a chance to hear his voice acknowledging the pain he caused. Yet part of me resisted, wary of opening old wounds that had barely begun to heal. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, trying to quell the storm inside me. Was I ready to face him again? Could I bear to hear words that might finally give shape to my unresolved grief? As evening shadows stretched across the room, I knew one thing with certainty. This was a moment that could redefine everything. And yet, beneath my fear lay a flicker of strength I'd almost forgotten I possessed. The decision was mine, whether to confront or let go. And for once, the power felt entirely in my hands. It was a conversation I never thought we'd have, one that had been simmering beneath the surface for far too long. Richard and I sat across from each other, the air between us thick with unspoken words. He broke the silence first, his voice unsteady, yet determined. "I need to tell you something," he began, eyes flickering up to meet mine, before dropping again to the floor. The confession spilled out slowly, each word wrapping around my heart like a vice. "I know I've disrespected you in the past," Richard admitted, his tone laced with regret and something else. Pain? Shame. In that moment, memories flashed through my mind like a slideshow of all those times he'd belittled me in front of others, dismissed my opinions as if they were inconsequential. The anger I had buried rushed to the surface. But somehow, instead of exploding, I felt an unexpected calm wash over me. Perhaps it was because I had waited so long to hear those words. Or maybe it was because I had finally realized where I stood. My voice was steady as I replied, "Thank you for admitting that. And just so we're clear, that won't ever be acceptable again. There was a power in my own words that even I didn't anticipate, a finality that resonated deeply within me. His admission had given me something invaluable, validation of what I'd always known but often doubted. Richard looked at me then with a mixture of relief and respect, a look I'd longed for yet never fully expected to see. It was as if we had both crossed a threshold into uncharted territory. This wasn't just about him acknowledging his past mistakes. It was about my unwavering affirmation of who I was and where I stood now. A weight lifted off my shoulders as our dynamic shifted subtly but unmistakably.